Okay, brothers, inshallah, the topic for tonight's discussion will be regarding the various kinds of revelation within the Holy Quran. We're amidst the nights of Ramadan. Now's the time to commemorate, to contemplate over the Holy Quran. And so we find that the word wahi, revelation of the Quran, is actually used in several different contexts, different definitions. And inshallah, today we're going to be exploring 4 various usages of the word wahi, revelation within the Holy Quran. You find that the first of these usages is what's known as the linguistic usage. Now, in the actual Arabic language, what does the word wahi mean? Now, normally, when you hear the word wahi, what first transponds to your mind? Revelation, Quran, right? But linguistically, the word wahi has a different meaning. Awha ilayh means he gave a quick, hidden form of communication. So basically, imagine you're at someone's house, right, and you overstayed. So you look at your mother, your spouse, your child, and you give them that signal, right? It's time to leave. But you do it in a very stealthy way, that the host and other people don't know this. It's quiet. You don't say anything. That is a form of wahi. When you have a form of communication without using any words. It's meant to be secret. It's meant to be hidden, right? Basically using your non-verbal language. And in fact, we can find this usage of the word wahi within the Holy Quran. In Surah Maryam, Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks regarding Zakaria, the Prophet, peace be upon him. Allah says, فَخَرَجَ عَلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ مِنَ الْمِحْرَابِ فَأَوْحَىٰ إِلَيْهِمْ سَبِّحُوا بُكْرَةً وَعَشِيًّا. Zakaria was instructed by God to do a fast. It's a kind of sawm. Fasting that is not permissible to do in Islam anymore. This is called Sawm al-Kalam. This is the fasting of speech, where 3 days Zakaria did not speak, did not talk to anybody. But he did do wahi. In what sense? He went and using his body language, non-verbal language, he told people to worship God. What kind of science he used? It's not clear. But he used, without words, a method of communication in order to tell people what? To worship Allah Azza wa Jalla. Therefore, the first function and usage of the word wahi, revelation in the Holy Quran, is a linguistic usage. This doesn't have a particularly religious aspect to it. Strictly in the pure Arabic language, this is what wahi means. You find the second usage that Allah Azza wa Jalla employs for the word wahi is what? Is when Allah wants to refer to the ghariza, to the fitrah, of either the human being or of animals. The natural instinct. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within the Holy Quran utilizes this method several times. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Nahl, the chapter of the bees, says, وَأَوْحَىٰ رَبُّكَ. Allah did wahi. إِلَى النَّحْلِ, to the bee. Allah sent down the Holy Book to the bee. This is a different usage, a different function of the word wahi. أَنْ اتَّخَذِ مِنَ الْجِبَالِ بُيُوتًا. Allah did wahi to the bee that take amongst the mountains your houses, your abode. Now, Mufassirin say, what this means is Allah created within the bee a natural instinct, a ghariza, to go and construct houses, right? The honeycomb and the house in which they live, within the mountain. This is just a natural instinct. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how does he communicate? Does he send words and messages? Not that we're aware of. What we understand what the Mufassirin have said, wahi in this context means Allah instills that natural instinct. And you find on the topic of bees, subhanAllah, the communication and the ways in which bees stay in touch with one another is so fascinating. In 1923, the Austrian researcher and etymologist, Karl van Frisch, he was one of the first to document the 8-figure pattern of the bee. So the bee does a little dance, you could call it, in the sky, right in the air, and it does it sort of like in an 8-figure pattern. So for centuries, this would puzzle people. And when do they usually do this? Whenever bees would leave the hive, they would go out. When they come back, that's the first thing they do. They do a little 8-figure pattern dance. So researchers were always confused. Are they happy to be back? Why exactly are they doing this? Well, Carl was one of the first to discover there's a reason why they do this. When they leave the hive, they go to do what? Find nectar, find food. And so let's say the bee ventures out 600 meters east and it finds some nectar there. Depending on the angle and the amount of time the bees does the 8-figure pattern, it's communicating the location and the distance of food to the other bees. This is a communication within the bees. They don't speak, but subhanAllah, look at the method they employ, and then you find within minutes, all the other bees go to that food source. It could be a mile away, and yet it can communicate it effectively, using the angle and using the amount of times it does that dance. And you find, I read an article in National Geographic, that bees, as they're leaving the hive, they run into positively charged ions. It strips ions off the outer shell of the bee, and it makes the bee itself positively charged. And depending on how far it goes out, the other bees react differently when it comes back. But scientists still don't know what exactly is going on. You know, if it's positively charged, negative, what does that have to do? How does that help in their communication? They say we haven't reached that level yet, where we can understand the channels of communication between the bees. So you find, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed within these animals the fitrah, the ghariza. Look at the leatherback turtle, right? That majestic sea turtle. From the moment it's born, it's in a World War II scene. It's on the beach, right? The baby turtles, they have to run, crawl quickly to the ocean. Otherwise, what? A seagull or some other animal will come and eat it. So it's literal first moments. It's just born. It's had 2 minutes of living. It has to quickly run to the ocean. Who installed in it to do that? Find a human baby. When it's born, for 2 years it doesn't know how to do anything, right? But this animal, subhanAllah, it's just born, and yet it knows instinctually to do this. This is a form of wahi. This is the second utilization of wahi that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala employs within the Holy Quran, regarding the fitrah or regarding the ghariza. You find the third usage of wahi within the Holy Quran is what is referred to as ilham. What is ilham? Ilham is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divinely inspires someone. When Allah, He doesn't communicate with you. You don't hear a voice from Allah. There's no book being sent. But in your heart, you feel a divine inspiration from Allah. This is called ilham. Where can we find this within the Holy Quran? You can find this in Surah Al-Qasas, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does ilham to the mother of Musa. How? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَرْضِعِيهِ فَإِذَا خِفْتِ عَلَيْهِ فَأَلْقِيهِ فِي الْيَمِّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspires the mother of Musa to what? To drop her baby where? In the water. What kind of mother would do this? Did she hear a voice that Allah has commanded her to do this? No. Did an angel come and tell her to do this? No. Did she see in a dream someone told her to do this? No. So what kind of sane mother would do this? Well, the difference is when the inspiration is divine, you know. So she felt in her heart a divine inspiration from Allah. And now is the time to do this. She didn't fully comprehend what, but she knew this feeling that she had in her heart was from Allah. This is in Surah Al-Qasas, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the incident of who? The mother of Musa, peace be upon him. Now you find it's not only Allah who could do ilham. Yes, when ilham is from Allah, it's divine inspiration. You find Allah Azza wa Jalla has in fact granted this ability of ilham, a feeling in the heart to who? To shaitan as well. So sometimes if you feel, not every feeling you have in your heart is necessarily inspired by Allah. Trump would always claim, I feel inspired to do this today. I'm pretty sure that wasn't always Allah. Right? Where does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say this? In Surah Al-An'am. Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا مِمَّا لَمْ يُذْكَرْ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. Do not eat that from which Allah's name has not been recited upon. وَإِنَّهُ لَفِسْقٌ وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ The devils, they do wahy. They whisper. They inspire your heart in a negative way to do evil things. Right? Right? That whisper, you don't hear anyone telling you anything, right? It's not like the cartoons or the movies. There's an angel, there's a devil, and they're talking and you can hear it. No. It's a feeling of inspiration. So you find even the devil has the ability to inspire. So you always have to double check. Sometimes if you have a weird feeling in your heart, is this inspired by Allah or is this inspired by the shaitan? How can you tell? It's obvious. If you're inspired to go drink alcohol, then probably it's not from Allah, right? If you're inspired to do great things, serve your parents, serve your community, engage in ibadah, things that are productive, then obviously that is more likely to be coming from Allah Azza wa Jalla. You find Allah Azza wa Jalla doesn't only do wahy to humans. In the Quran, Allah does wahy to the angels as well. Where do we find this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Anfal, إِذْ يُوحِي رَبُّكَ إِلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي مَعَكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does wahy to the angels. He inspires them to act in certain ways. He doesn't speak to them, doesn't use a voice. They don't see Allah in a dream. No. Allah does wahy. So this third form and function of wahy is what? Inspiration within the heart. The fourth function and usage of wahy within the Holy Quran is what we commonly and typically understand wahy to be, which is a divine message. It's not a divine inspiration within a particular person's heart. This is a divine message from Allah Azza wa Jalla for all of humanity. However, this can actually come in three different ways. There are three methods, three forms that the official wahy of Allah can come. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states all the different forms within the first ayah that I recited. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا كَانَ لِبَشَرٍ أَن يُكَلِّمُهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا وَحْيًا. Allah says in this verse, Allah does not communicate with any human except, he gives three exceptions. إِلَّا وَحْيًا. Now the Mufassirin have said, wahya in this word, in this ayah, what does this mean? The Quran, we understand from the Mufassirin, was revealed in two separate ways. We have something called inzal, and we have something called tanzil. Now, 2 nights ago, on the great night of power, what happened? The Quran was revealed. In which format? Inzal. The Quran, 600-page book, wasn't revealed in one day. The Quran, on Mount Hira, the prophets, Allah inspired the content of the Quran within his heart. That's called inzal. It's a single, instantaneous revelation of the Quran upon the heart of the prophet. And the prophet is the only one to have experienced inzal. Why? Because only the prophet can experience the depths and the true nature of the Quran. This book that we see, right? This is just a surface of what the Quran is. We talked last night about the depths of the Quran. And now Imam Sadiq will say, every day if you ask me about the tafsir of an ayah, I'll give you a different tafsir. Only the Prophet could handle the true depths of the Quran in its true form. All of us rest, we can just handle the written form. So that's the first form in which the Quran, an official revelation, can be revealed. Then what does Allah say? أَوْ مِنْ وَرَاءِ حِجَابٍ. From beneath a veil. Meaning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates a voice. Allah does not have a voice. However, when he would speak to Musa, Kalimullah, how would he do that? He would create a voice and he would speak to Musa. There are times we have a hadith when Allah would create a voice and speak to Prophet Muhammad. Sallu alayhi wa sallam. And the third form in which official revelation comes down, and this is what we're most used to, أَوْ يُرْسِلَ رَسُولًا فَيُوحِيَ بِإِذْنِهِ. He sends a messenger, an angel, and that angel carries what? The contents of the wahy. So you find there are these four usages of wahy within the Holy Quran. Now just briefly, I'd like to touch upon the various wahy as it relates to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. variations of wahi specific to him that are relevant to the Prophet. The Prophet, when he would experience wahi, in which capacity would he experience it? The first is al-ru'ya as-sadiqa. The Prophet, he would see an authentic, a true dream. Now, the difference between the Prophet seeing a true dream and me and you seeing a true dream is that the Prophet, his dreams were wahi. Any dream of the Prophet, like the dream of who? Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him. Now, if me and you see a dream like that, it's nonsense. But Prophet Ibrahim, the prophets, when they see dreams, it's all wahi. Us, when we see random dreams and we come to the Mawlana the next day, we want to understand what the dream was. The first question I ask is, how late did you have biryani last night? Because there's a correlation. How much food you eat, how late, and the kind of weird dreams that you see. For us, it's not, the source of our dreams is not wahi, it's biryani or curry. It's whatever we eat. Not, you know how on the hand sanitizer says 99.9999 germs? 99.999, all our dreams mean nothing. They're just nonsense. And in fact, scientists say, those who study sleep, that you see typically upwards of 40 dreams a night, but you just forget most of them by the time you're awake. So most of the dreams that we see are nonsense. But the Prophet is different. Rasulullah, when he sees a dream, it's a direct wahi from Allah. And in fact, we have a hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, peace be upon him. In this hadith, he states that the first form of wahi the Prophet experienced was in fact a dream. Now the inzal and then later the tanzil and then the meaning with Jibreel, that happened when the Prophet was 40 onwards. But until he was 40, what was his communication with Allah? Imam Sadiq says the most common communication was through dreams. But, like I said, the dreams of a prophet are different than our dreams. His dreams are from the source, which is Allah. The second form in which the prophets would receive wahi is what? Is through a Rasul, through a messenger of Allah. And we have a hadith that the only angel that would ever come down with wahi upon Rasulullah is Jibreel. He was the only angel because he was the highest of angels that was allowed to bring down revelation upon the Prophet. Now, Jibreel, there were three methods in which he would interact with Rasulullah. The first is in his true form. Now, for those younger audience, I'm sure you're familiar with this term called biblically accurate angel, right? I'm sure you've heard of this. It's like a very scary looking angel. It shows like a semi-monster and it says biblically accurate angel. Why? Because in the Bible, anytime anyone is approached by an angel, the first thing the angel says is what? Do not fear. Do not be afraid. Apparently, a true nature of an angel has such a scary appearance that anyone that encounters one is afraid. The first time Rasulullah only saw Jibreel in his true form twice. The first was the first time wahi was revealed. When the Prophet was in the mountain, Jibreel descended upon him in his true form. The hadith states that he filled up the east and the west. He was so large, he filled up the skies. It's the true nature of Jibreel. Then the hadith says, فَتَهَيَّبَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. He was overwhelmed by his appearance, such that he fainted. Now, after the Prophet woke up, he saw Jibreel in a human form. And the most common form that's Rasulullah would experience with Jibreel was his human form. Jibreel, how and what kind of shape would he take? We even have a hadith that he used to resemble one of the companions of the Prophet. Dihya bin Khalifa al-Kalbi. He was a man that lived in Medina, and it's said that he was the most handsome man in the city. So kind of like Salman Khan today, or Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, someone like that. So Jibreel, when he would meet up with the Prophet in his human form, he would always look like who? Like this man, Dihya. And the Prophet would tell his companions, he would tell them, if you see me in the midst of intense discussion and debate with Dihya, don't interfere. Why? Because I'm most likely meeting with Jibreel. He has wahi, he has something important that he wants to come down with. And finally, Jibreel would sometimes communicate just through voice. So the Prophet, he would hear Jibreel, he would hear his voice, but he wouldn't see him. And of course, all the contents of the Quran were revealed through the Tanzeel, through Jibreel. He would come down, he would recite it to Rasulullah, and Rasulullah would faithfully recite it to the people. So the chain is what? From Allah Azza wa Jal to Jibreel to Rasulullah, vocally to us. What a beautiful, unmitigated chain the Quran has from us to Allah. Now, there is a misconception that exists among some, and this is a perverted belief within the followers of Ahlul Bayt. Yes, we mentioned earlier the Prophet would sometimes see dreams, and that was the wahi that Allah would communicate with him. Some scholars, although they're the extreme minority, have suggested that the Quran is simply the Prophet experiencing dreams. And then when he wakes up, he tries to make sense of those dreams, he puts it in poetry format, and he reveals it to the people. That basically, the Quran is just the interpretation of the Prophet's dreams. Within the school of Ahlul Bayt thought, we completely reject this. No. Yes, the Prophet did have dreams, but those are conversations he had with God. It has nothing to do with the Quran. Within the school of thought of the Ahlul Bayt, the Quran is the direct words of Allah. The direct words of Allah. It's not the Prophet's interpretation as transmitted through Jibreel to the Prophet. And lastly, the third method in which the Prophet would have wahi with Allah is sometimes he would have an unmediated, direct encounter with Allah. Sometimes the Prophet would be sitting like us today in the masjid. He'd be speaking with his companions when all of a sudden he'd faint. He'd be sweating so much and he'd faint. So when he wakes up, the companions ask him, what happened? What would the Prophet respond? He says, لَقَيْتُ Allah. He says, I met Allah. So when they asked him, what happened? You met Allah? And then he says, Allah told me to do this. Allah told me to convey this message. He would have, not through dreams, not through Jibreel, a direct experience with Allah Azza wa Jalla. Now, in what capacity? We could only begin to imagine. Now, some of the sects of Islam, they believe when the Prophet would faint and he'd have these moments, he would be meeting with Jibreel. And Jibreel would come down with such a heavy message that he would faint and he'd be sweating. But we have a hadith from Imam Ja'far Sadiq, peace be upon him. And this hadith, Imam Ja'far Sadiq, peace be upon him, he was asked, someone came and asked him, that your grandfather, Rasulullah, when he would have those moments that he faint, what was going on? What was happening? Did he meet with Jibreel? Sadiq says no. He says, because Jibreel, the highest of angels, when he would come down to meet Rasulullah, in what capacity would we meet him? He says he would first ask permission to come into the room of Rasulullah. Jibreel asked Rasulullah for permission. And then the hadith says, Imam Sadiq, peace be upon him, states, and then he would sit between his hands like a slave. Jibreel would sit down like a slave in front of Rasulullah. And then he would commute to him the wahi. He says, so those moments when the Prophet would faint and he'd have those magnificent encounters, those were direct, unmediated encounters with who? With Allah Azza wa Jalla. So these are the three various ways of revelation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicates with who? With Rasulullah. We said initially dreams. And by the way, on the topic of dreams, a friend of mine was in the Hajj not too long ago. And when he was in the Hajj, he encountered one of the police officers in DAR-E, a volunteer officer, who helps to facilitate the Hajj, those people to come go. So he says he saw me praying and he noticed that I was a follower of the faith. So he says, he came to me and he asked me, how do you guys pray? He said, we believe that the Prophet Rasulullah used to pray like this, with his hands down. The voluntary police officer, he says, but my father, he's saying, he saw a dream in which he saw Rasulullah pray with his hands closed. So he says, therefore, this must mean what? If my dad 40 years ago saw a dream like that, all Muslims have to now pray like this. So my friend, this person, he says, oh, really? He says, my dad also 40 years ago saw a dream where Rasulullah also prayed like this, with his hands down. So the police officer was confused, like, really? Your dad saw that too? He's like, no, I'm just joking. He says, but look, this is not an intellectual argument. Your dad saw a dream 40 years ago. Like we said, most dreams are nonsense, right? In fact, Freud has suggested that most of the dreams that we see are manifestations of our hidden desires. So our dreams have more to do with our own psyche than with anything out there in reality, with anything that connects to Allah Azza wa Jalla. So most of our dreams, we have to put that to the side. If you see someone using a dream as an argument, that's not a powerful argument, right? Arguments, when it comes to everything in Islam, from Salah, from prayer to the Sha'ad, to Muharram and Ashura, they all have to come from what? The Quran and the Sunnah. All of our faith is based on what? The Quran, number one, and the Sunnah of Rasulullah and his family. Anything else is considered what? Anything derived from religion that is not from these two is what? It's bid'ah, right? If you come and say, well, in my dream I saw this, and let's start this new thing, this is bid'ah. What does Rasulullah say about the bid'ah? Kullu bid'ah dalal. Every bid'ah is a misguidance. And where does misguidance lead you? وَكُلُّ ضَلَالَةٍ فِي النَّارِ. You can clearly see the change. So Rasulullah would interact with the wahi in terms of dreams, in terms of Jibreel in his various forms, and in terms of these direct, unmediated experiences. And in fact, Imam Sadiq notes that he would have many of these encounters with Allah Azza wa Jalla. And just to sum up, the four revelations, the four functions of revelation within the Holy Quran were the linguistic usage, like the example of the bee. We also said there's what? Oh, the linguistic usage, which is Zakaria when you use the non-verbal communication. The second is the instinct and the ghariza, right? The fitra of the human being and the animal, in which Allah bestows animals with certain instincts. The third is what? Divine inspiration. Divine inspiration from Allah Azza wa Jalla. And in fact, my dear brothers and sisters, you are able to experience this kind of divine inspiration. When you hear the word khila, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Actually, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word khila? Anything comes up? Have you ever done a khila or istikhara? Has anyone ever done an istikhara here? Yes. What is an istikhara? Seeking guidance from Allah. How do you do an istikhara? Open the Quran or the Tasbih, right? Various ways of doing it. And these are all valid mechanisms. However, according to the traditions of Ahlul Bayt, the original, authentic form of istikhara is actually a prayer. There's a prayer called Salat al-Istikhara. What are the mechanisms for this prayer? You only do this prayer when you're truly mutahayyir. Mutahayyir means you've weighed all the evidence, all the pros and cons, right? And you're still confused. Some people, they go to the restaurant, chicken or beef today, istikhara. That's not the place of istikhara. Istikhara is not for chicken and beef. Reserved, seeking Allah's guidance, and what's not for more important things. No, yes, it's not haram. You can always ask for Allah's guidance. But, Allah also gave us the intellect. We're meant to use that. But when there are times when we use our intellect, you're old, let's say, and you have to either do a surgery but could have complications. You could not do it, but then that has its own. So you weigh all the benefits. The doctor says you could do it, you can't. You're still unsure. Then you do a 2-rak'ah prayer. And then after that, the first feeling that you experience, the first inclination that you have is the ilham from Allah Azza wa Jalla. You go with that. So if you've ever wanted to do istikhara, yes, opening the Mus'haf and seeking the guidance of Allah, using the tasbih, those are valid forms as well. But the original, authentic form of istikhara is actually the form of prayer. So if you're in doubt, you don't have sincere intention, before you pray, make it clear to Allah in your heart what it is that you're trying to do. Then, right after prayer, the first feeling you have, go with that. That, inshallah, will be inspiration from Allah Azza wa Jalla. So we said third is what? Divine inspiration. We mentioned the example of the mother of Musa. We mentioned that devils are also able to do inspiration, right? But this is not divine inspiration. This is satanic inspiration. And finally, there is the wahy, as we all know it, which is a message from Allah Azza wa Jalla for humanity, whether through inzal, through tanzeel, or through an angel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saw fit that us human beings, we are worthy of receiving His direct words. So my dear brothers and sisters, my advice to myself first and foremost, and to you, is these nights, especially throughout the year, but especially these nights, hold on to the Book of Allah. The Book of Allah is something that has fihi hidayah. You find humans throughout history, we've progressed on all levels. Our buildings have grown in size. We went from the 19th century, from flight for the first time in 1914, to what? To going to the moon. The human being, in terms of scientific technology, mashallah, he will advance. She'll advance. But when it comes to morality, akhlaq, virtues, we find now in 2023 what's happening. Just look at the LGBT community and what's going on. Or as I like to call it, the LMNOP community. Right? Look at everything else that's been going on. What happens when we don't make ourselves align with the revelation of Allah? This is what happens. So my dear brothers and sisters, take fast heed to the book of the Quran, the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. And inshallah ta'ala, we can learn from the Quran and implement the lessons of the Quran in our lives. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala ali bayti al-tayyibin al-tahirin. Dear brothers and sisters, let us all raise our hands in dua. Many of us have hajat that are waiting to be answered by Allah. Loved ones who are ill, who are sick. So let us all raise our hands in dua and recite the blessed verse 5 times. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amman yujibu al-mustarra idha da'a wa yakshifu as-su'. 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 أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. اللهم اكشف عنا العذاب إنا مسلمون. اللهم اقض حوائجنا. اللهم شافي مرضانا. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات, especially to those who have attended, our loved ones, those who have contributed to this program. Let us all recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Before that, a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Just want to make a couple of announcements. We have time for 5 to 10 minutes. For, 15 minutes. So a couple of announcements. We have tonight after iftar, we have Q&A session with Brother Sayyid Tasmini. So after iftar, inshallah, once everything is done, ladies and guys, please gather here so we can have a nice Q&A session. So whatever questions you have, you can ask Sayyid. Second thing, tomorrow, inshallah, we have a youth session with the Sayyid. So all of you guys, so after iftar, we will go outside. So you guys always have a better kind of, opportunity than us, I guess. You can have a bonfire, you can do whatever activity you want to go outside, I guess. So anyway, so you're going to have a nice, your own personal time with Sayyid, with all the youth. Won't be any of us there. So you can have questions, whatever discussions you want to have burning questions in your heart that you want to ask Jay, you can do that. So those are two things I wanted to mention. Lastly, again, I want to just ask again for generous donations. Inshallah, we are almost at the end of Ramadan. We have only a few days left. So any generous donation is highly appreciated. We're almost kind of close to our Ramadan fund target. But of course, we have the other target for the loan payout, which for this year was $8,000. So I think, please, this is your community, this is your center, this is your place. You come here, you enjoy here, everything that we do. We want to make sure that we spend good time with your family, with friends, everything, and people like myself, Sayed, and all the other Ahmed Bhai, Muntasir, everybody. We're trying our best. Asad and Javed. Everybody's trying to make a place for you guys to come and have fun, enjoy, learn, get good knowledge here. So please generously donate to the funds here. Thank you so much, and can get ready and for Salat Maghrib right now. Okay? Thank you so much.
Yesterday.
Probably never want to I won't say this here.
Yes, if she's yeah. Like I said,